Before 20, welcome to Across the Lines News and Analysis. I'm Frank.
I'm Bobby.
I'm Justin.
And today we got a good show for you. Now, it being 420, and in the spirit of the holiday, we're going to be talking first about marijuana. Now, this has been an issue it shouldn't be an issue, but it is an issue that has been going on for quite some time. Scramble, you want to give any thoughts on it first?
Oh yeah, well, for a little bit of background information, we've all heard a little bit of the history about why weed was made illegal. There was a reefer madness aspect of it. There was the war on drugs in general, which Nixon perpetuated, but weed was initially made illegal in the 30s for a variety of reasons that don't necessarily make sense, but we'll get into that later. Essentially, the current status of marijuana is that it's a Schedule 1 drug, the most dangerous and least useful schedule there is, essentially. That officially means it has no medicinal value, and that is on a federal level, meaning that it can override any state decisions regarding that. We're going to be speaking both about recreational legalization and medical legalization, and the fact of the matter is, as long as marijuana remains a Schedule 1 drug and illegal under federal law, technically the DEA or other government organizations, they do have the jurisdiction to essentially get in the way of any of that. On top of that, we're going to be going into exactly what some of these legalization measures actually contain and how some of them are actually trying to take advantage of the movement. I mean, it's very common knowledge that people, it's become more popular over time, want marijuana legalized, so they're going to take what they can get. And what they're getting is a bunch of rip-off laws which essentially set up monopolies for these corporations that are semi-funding them and lobbying for them. We'll get into more of that later. Now, there's another component of this, the war on drugs component in general, what it leads to. And it can lead to some very bad things. I'm going to leave that off to either you or Bob.
Now, first off, let's go on to why it's illegal in the first place. Here's a quote from Nixon's John Ehrlichman. He was Nixon's counsel and assistant to the president for domestic affairs. The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and the black people. You understand what I'm saying. We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. That's a direct quote from this guy.
It doesn't...
That is evil, and I have to admit, smart. It's very smart.
It's
good tactic.
Fucking politically clever, but it's downright scumbaggy.
But it doesn't get any more clear-cut than that. That's literally a guy that was in the administration saying that they made weed illegal not for...
Not because it was bad. No one thought it was actually bad for society, but to target minorities and people Nixon didn't like.
Yeah,
and Mexicans were also part
and
of
it's
that.
just
marijuana prohibition is founded on a lie.
Yeah, and actually we have a little video of Nixon going on about what he thought of marijuana and the juice. That we hope you enjoy that. But like, how could a thing that was built upon such bullshit and now blatantly out there bullshit last this long?
I just don't think people care that much, to be honest. I mean, there's people that care about legalizing, like, it's become gradually more, like, prominent now, but I think people just really don't care, and people don't want to, like, take any action
I think
towards it.
I think it's that they're misinformed, because if you talk to a good amount of, right now, the consensus has changed, I believe, and now, Bob, if you wouldn't mind Googling this, what the current, there's polls that track the amount of people that are in favor of legalization is actually at an all-time high, but there's still a lot of people, mostly in the older generation, that are still convinced that marijuana can literally lead to the end of society if it were made legal, which I find downright ridiculous.
Oh yeah, and here I'm gonna shoot some facts at you. And this is actually, some of this comes from Canada, too. It's not exclusive to the United States. Canada is looking to legalizing it because in the nation of Canada, it is currently easier for children in elementary school to get weed than it is for them to get beer. It's actually very accessible. And when I think of kids smoking weed, I usually think like middle school at the earliest, but elementary school, it just seems like it's getting younger and younger. And essentially, one of the main reasons I feel people oppose legalization has to do with protecting their children, and it's just people not realizing the proven fact that your child is less likely to smoke weed if it is legal than if it is illegal. Therefore, if that's how you feel about it,
no, that is,
you should be
that is
gunning
true.
for legalization.
That's interesting.
It's just they grew up with these principles, and Dare tried to hammer them into our heads, and they're not about to abandon the principle because weed's been demonized to the point where it's just no, it will always be no.
You know what?
And it's going to be no until the day I die and a new 18-year-old.
Hold on, let's talk about Dare for 1 second. I could give a personal anecdote with this. The Dare program, one, it's objectively been shown to have been counterproductive. And I can say subjectively, it was counterproductive. I will never ever forget when the Dare officer came into class and described magic mushrooms. Prior to that, I had no idea what magic mushrooms were. I had no idea, anything to do with it. But he made it sound pretty interesting. From that point on, I was interested. And now also to go on with weed, it was something pushed that it was deadlier than cigarettes. You smoke it, you die. They hyped it up. Then I get to high school and I see people smoking, and it was nothing like they described. Because of that, I also the things that they were right about, I also gave less credit to. Because once you find out they're full of shit about one thing, a lot of people assume, they must be full of shit about everything. That's part of the reason we have so many different drug problems in this country.
And
people
now,
aren't educated.
And now marijuana, people in favor of supporting legal marijuana is at an all-time high. I'm looking at a CBS News article right now, and it was posted earlier this year. It says 61% of people are in favor of legalizing marijuana. So it's clearly gaining a lot of traction, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be legalized like next year or the year after, but
it should be. In a democracy, isn't that how it's supposed to work? What the people want is how it's governed?
Well, what's actually interesting? New Jersey is when Christie leaves office, they're saying that they're still going to vote on legal marijuana despite Sessions being the Attorney General, which is awesome.
Yeah, fuck that guy. Good people don't smoke marijuana.
But the biggest problem I have, not with how the federal law, how it's a Schedule I drug, is that marijuana is medically cleared in, I forget exactly how many states, but it's a lot of states right now. And it's still a Schedule I drug that says there's no medicinal benefit at all. And it's already been proven to help various things, such as certain types of cancers, glaucoma, appetite, just a bunch of shit.
And now, just to do a little bit of a reference, Schedule I drugs are supposed to be the worst drugs that we mentioned. Now, drugs like cocaine,
Cocaine's a Schedule II.
Cocaine is a Schedule II. I believe methamphetamine is a Schedule II. We're throwing a list up for you to be more accurate. But when you look at some of their drugs, opiates are Schedule II, or some possibly lower.
That's fucking ridiculous.
Xanax is actually, I believe, under Schedule II. That's like Schedule III or IV.
Dude, that's fucking ridiculous. You have people that are dying and it's a well-known fact already. We have an opioid problem going on in this fucking country. Not millions, but thousands of people are dying a year from these prescription drugs. And those are okay. People could use those because they're prescribed by a doctor, but we can't smoke pot. Hasn't killed one person
ever. And they somehow have that ranked as more dangerous than the opiates and the other proven to be addictive and deadly drugs.
Heroin's I believe is one of the only opiates that is Schedule I. The rest of them are.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
I don't.
The other thing is it's kind of hard for them to get. We already have enough conclusive evidence that it has medical benefit. It is very hard to conduct this research given the
because it's Schedule I, it's illegal to do research.
If you make it Schedule III, even if you keep it illegal, you open the door for more research on the topic.
Exactly. Schedule I, you can't even research. And speaking, while we're on this topic, have you guys ever seen the clip of the head of the DEA when she was not interrogated, interviewed, whatever you want to call it, by Congress, and they were asking her if she believed that methamphetamine, heroin, and all these different drugs are more addictive and dangerous than marijuana, and she cannot give a straight answer.
I don't know if I have. Let's show our viewers.
Yeah, we definitely throw that one up there.
But I think another aspect of why it's because let's face it, weed being illegal creates so many jobs. Like think about if it was and I obviously am in favor.
Worse for somebody's health than marijuana?
I don't think any illegal drug
Is
good.
heroin worse for someone's health than marijuana?
Again, all.
I mean, either yes,
illegal
no, or
drugs.
I don't know. I mean, if you don't know, you can look this up. You should know this as the chief administrator for the Drug Enforcement Agency. I'm asking you a very straightforward question. Is heroin worse for someone's health than marijuana?
All illegal drugs are bad.
Does this mean you don't know?
Heroin causes an addiction.
Okay.
That causes many problems. It's very hard to kick.
So does that mean that the health impact of heroin is worse than marijuana? Is that what you're telling me?
I think you're asking a subjective question.
No, it's objective. Just looking at the science, this is your area of expertise. I'm a layperson, but I've read some of the studies. I'm aware of it. I'm just asking you as an expert in the subject area, is heroin worse for someone's health than marijuana?
And I'm answering as a police officer and as a DEA agent that these drugs are illegal because they are dangerous, because they are addictive, because they do hurt a person's health.
So heroin is more addictive than marijuana? Is heroin more addictive than marijuana in your experience?
Generally, the properties of heroin, yes, it's more addictive.
Is methamphetamine more addictive than marijuana?
Well, both are addictive.
Well, is methamphetamine more highly addictive than marijuana?
But I think another aspect of why it's because let's face it, weed being illegal creates so many jobs. Like think about if it was and I obviously am in favor of legalization, but think about the amount of jobs that would be lost if weed was. They would obviously cut the DEA. There'd be so many. There's a bunch of task force out there.
The prison guard union is actually one of the biggest groups lobbying to keep weed illegal.
Exactly. Yeah.
But how are we gonna fill the prisons? Locking people up for a forbidden fucking plant.
You have people
crazy.
You have people getting locked up for multiple years smoking weed, but if they do something like I don't know, you could like literally commit a violent crime and be sent
if
and
you
receive
are
a lesser
banker,
sentence.
If you are a banker and rip people off for their money, look at when was that banking collapse? All the
2008.
The 2008 collapse. Look at all the shenanigans those people pulled.
Only one guy went away.
Yes, so
only
you could basically steal millions and millions of dollars from people in the country, and that's fine, but I'll smoke a forbidden plant that's proven to be harmless for the most part, and we're gonna lock you in a man-made cave for years at a time potentially and ruin your life. That is, in my opinion, fucked up and illogical.
And as for what you said about the guard unions, one thing to keep in mind is, realistically, is legal weed going to create or kill jobs? It's obviously going to kill some jobs.
And create a fuck ton more.
A
lot more than it would destroy.
But here's the other thing. The excessive tax revenue you get can be put towards new jobs in other industries, such as bridge rebuilding, roads, things of that nature. So the idea is create more jobs than you're losing, or just as many to even out, whichever one. And then essentially, yes, I understand that is a downside. Some people are, they took training for it, and there's a job gap now for criminal justice task force, prison guards, etc. But the thing is, there's going to be new jobs available, so that's offset. And then are we really going to stop this from happening simply because some of those jobs are going to shift?
You know what? And also is another point to go off of that. The criminal, all right, it's not even going to really hurt the criminal justice field. And this is coming from a criminal justice major. It's why I majored in college. They could reallocate those people to more relevant points. Right now, we claim to have all this crime going on with the new administration claiming the terrorists are coming, all this. Do we really need to and all the people running over the border? Instead of locking people up for having a illegal plant, how about you relocate these people dealing with the actual crime that's going on, the real problems we have, instead of this manufactured nonsense that Nixon pulled out of his ass to fuck with his political opponents?
That's still endorsed
Going-
to this day. Bob, do you have anything to say before we move on to 64, Prop 64?
Yes, well, actually, that's that'll lead into exactly what I'm going to say is leading into that. So I'm looking at an article right now, and it estimates that we could raise $28 billion in tax revenue from legalizing weed nationwide. And since our laboratories of democracy, Colorado, Washington, and other states, but the data is only on Colorado and Washington right now, they've exceeded the expectations for tax revenue in their own states. Colorado assumed that they would raise $70 million in marijuana taxes, and they ended up getting $140 million in taxes.
Do you know how many cruise missiles we can buy with that? Not too many.
And in Washington, marijuana sales are averaging over $2 million a day. So people clearly are enjoying their weed over there, but it's not even just legalizing it so the people that just want to smoke it. It's about all the benefits that come from it.
You know what? Before we get to Prop 64, let's just finish off on the point we were on, because there's some relevant things that we missed going there. I think the main thing with it is personal freedoms. By having it illegal, and I love that a lot of the people who are anti-marijuana, you can't make it illegal, or you can't make it legal, are also very anti-government interference in your life. By having it illegal, what the government's effectively saying is that they can tell you what a grown adult can and cannot choose to ingest in their own body, even if it doesn't cause them to harm anyone else or harm society in any way. It's the government telling you what you can and can't eat, ingest, experience. That, my opinion, not even in my opinion, I think it's pretty much a fact. That is, for the land of the free, a pretty anti-freedom thing to have.
And just another thing before we move on to Prop 64, just think about this. Like,
well, so we gotta go with the cartels.
Why is tobacco and alcohol legal but pot isn't?
Well, remember, we did make alcohol illegal, and what happened? It didn't work. It made organized crime blow up. People still fucking drank. The money was going towards the black market and criminal organizations, which is exactly what's happening with marijuana. Now, America is a capitalist nation. We should understand the principles of supply and demand. Just because you make something illegal does not mean that the demand for it goes away. And when there's a demand, someone will meet the fucking supply.
Someone's going to fill the market.
In this case, it's the cartels and all these the criminals out the border that we need that wall to keep out, or basically funded because America has made drugs illegal and they bring the drugs into the country. You want to hurt them really bad, make marijuana, and even let's go further, make drugs in general legal. End the war on drugs, and you will see you would literally see the cartels and other criminal organizations cripple from lack of funds. We've seen it during Prohibition. We've seen it before. It should not be, there should be an obvious solution.
Yeah, basically when it comes to keeping marijuana legal, we're essentially ripping ourselves off. We're conning ourselves. And we're suckers for doing it because we have all this money that could be going to us marijuana, it could be the cash crop of the United States. As large as our national debt is in the trillions, we could take a huge chunk out of that within a decade or two if we legalized it in the right way and made it our cash crop. And it's very sad to see that we still can't stop stepping on our own toes to make forward progress. Mm-hmm. But as far as Proposition 64 goes, the reason I bring that up is it's an example of it's not as bad as some past measures in other states, but it is an example of something that could interfere with that. Now, like I said earlier, people want legalized marijuana, especially recreationally legalized marijuana, and they're going to take what they can get. So if they see it, even if they haven't researched it, they're likely going to vote for it. The problem is there's a lot of strings attached to it now. Obviously, the government, they're not taking any chances with under-regulation, essentially. They want to start it off very strict, and that's understandable. The issue goes into the business side of it. All right. So Proposition 64 was on the ballot last election, and it did pass with about 57% of the vote in California. It should go into effect at some point this year. I forget how long it'll take to go fully into effect. But essentially, you are now allowed to recreationally smoke marijuana hold on to, I believe, up to an ounce, and then you are allowed to have your own plants, I believe 6 or 7 of them.
Yes.
Now, this sounds like great news, and it most certainly, I would call it a step in the right direction. But when you look into the business side of it, you can see where they snuck in those strings attached that make it fantastic for bigger corporations to form monopolies or semi-monopolies.
Of course.
And it makes it really hard for the small guys. And I'll explain it in this way. For one thing, if you don't get the license, 6 to 7 plants limited, that's more of like kind of your personal garden. That's more of a hobby. Now, when we look at the smaller businesses, we have an issue where there's not enough of a profit margin potential. Basically, it's very common knowledge. Generally, legal weed tends to be a lot more expensive than black market marijuana. The problem is, in Prop 64, it's going to be estimated to could be well over $35 a gram, which is ridiculous. There's a number of reasons for this. For one thing, there's a 15% retail tax on top of sales tax. Sales tax in California can get as high in, for example, Los Angeles County, 9%. So right off the bat, you're already having 24% of your potential, that's your retail, not your profit, cut, which is going to cut immensely into your profits. Additionally, there's a $9.25 per ounce charge on growing it before selling it. That's going to cut into it even more. What this means is the price of marijuana will be driven up, and once it gets to ridiculous points, it's got to be the point where people are looking for something decent at a affordable price, and price will be the main determinant, which means you can't really go that high. You don't have much market power. It's determined by the customers. And basically, since it costs you so much to make and sell 1 gram of marijuana compared to what you're selling it for, it means there's a small profit margin per gram, and therein lies the problem. The only way to make decent money off of this is to sell a lot, high volume, sell as many grams as possible. Now, for big, large corporations or just bigger, localized firms, this is no problem. They have these farms established. I believe there's a doctrine where only they are allowed to grow for the next 5 years. I'd have to check that. But basically, they're not going to have any problem. All they have to do is keep selling, and it's recession-proof, They're going to stay afloat. The problem is that these smaller companies, they won't be, since it's lower profit margin, they're limited in how much they can make by size, by capital. They're not going to be able to make a substantial amount of profit, and they're going to sink. And we've seen measures like this, some even more blatant, snuck into other measures that passed. I really wish I could remember right now, but there was one in another state that nearly passed 2 years ago that was declined because of this. And basically, like I said, people are very desperate for marijuana legalization. They'll take what they can get. What they're getting is a ripoff with the potential for huge problems. And there's one other thing attached to it. It kills a lot of the point of legalization, because if marijuana is that ridiculously expensive, people are going to go to the black market anyway, even though it's legal. And we saw this in Colorado at first when it started. Now, prices in Colorado have dropped, but when they started out, they were fairly insane too. $25 for a gram was a pretty good price if you could find it. And when it first started out, they did interviews with drug dealers there. They said, their business is still doing fine because the price is so high, people will still buy off them. Well, that means the money that could be going towards taxes is now actually going back to the black market, which, as I said, defeats the whole point. What they notice in Colorado is, as time's gone on, the prices have gone down. Now it is starting to affect the black market in Colorado when it comes to marijuana. So basically, to wrap up Proposition 64, it's a somewhat good example of a trend we're seeing, which is larger corporations trying to take example of an emerging industry which will be worth trillions of dollars worldwide and be absolutely recession-proof, and that would be a very disadvantageous position to start from, and the whole cash crop principle would largely benefit the corporations more than the American public or government itself.
I agree. Honestly, but most of that I fully agree. One thing I don't think, I look at it as a fully positive, and even though, yes, the corporations are getting over, which they do every chance they get.
Oh, yeah, that's to be expected.
The bigger problem is the amount of people who get locked up for doing something that is not wrong. That is the only reason it's illegal is because some jackass decided to use it as a political maneuver. Now,
I'm just saying one of the other main benefits of it is the economic benefit.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's being cut into.
Now, my argument right now, yes, it is getting cut into, but remember how how capitalism works. part of the reason they're able to pull that shit now is because it's only legal in a few places. Once there's more competition, and if it was federally legal, and, you know, it's treated like any other industry federally, there's going to be a lot more competition, which will bring the prices down drastically.
Exactly, because once you have the small, like you said, once it's legalized, say it gets legalized nationwide, there's going to be a lot more competition, and who's to say that the corporation is going to be making the best fucking pot out there? People could just be small business owners with making their edibles, like just anything like that. It doesn't necessarily...
The real enthusiasts.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, it will drive prices down, because you could have the small business owners selling grams for whatever, like, so let's say $25. Like,
that's another problem with some of these. For example, the one in the other state I mentioned, it actually didn't allow anyone besides larger companies to grow beyond the, I believe it was 6 plants in that state amount, meaning you can't do that. And that's not on this one. They managed to avoid that with this one, which is fantastic.
Well, what makes you...
But if that happens, then it's an absolute monopoly, and there's no competitors to drive them out.
What's like, do you know off the top of your head what like the criteria is for like quote unquote big company that could like sell marijuana?
Well, I just remembered they limited cultivation to, I believe it was 7 plants or farms, and they were all owned by, I believe they were all owned by the same company. Now, this was years ago. I wish I could remember.
Yeah, that's something before we go. Yeah, we should look into that a little more before talking on it, because I have no idea of it.
You guys have any more on that? Any more on weed, though?
Well, no, I think we hit everything we wanted to.
Oh, I got one more thing. I know we kind of passed that topic already, but I found this stat, and I think it's really important. In reference to when we were talking about the drug cartels, marijuana sales in the United States make up between 20 and 30% of Mexican drugs gang sales. So, you would be cutting into their business drastically if marijuana was legalized. And so it's just another, like, it's food for thought.
Well, look what happened to Al Capone and the rest of the what were they, liquor runners, or whatever you want to call the people during Prohibition with the liquor. The second they got rid of Prohibition,
they disappeared.
They fizzled away really fast. And that's a fact anyone can look up. Now, one thing I'm going to give a quick look up. How many people are locked up for marijuana? And then we'll move on to our next topic.
I believe it's very high, and I also believe there is a racial disparity in it. There could be a number of contributions to racial disparity, but I remember you are more likely to get arrested for marijuana if you are black.
It's because the stat is blacks and whites smoke marijuana at basically the same rate.
Actually, whites smoke it slightly more.
But blacks are 2 times more likely to get arrested.
4 times more likely.
Are you sure, dude?
We're throwing the exact on the screen, but I believe it was 4 times. But here are some numbers I do have up right now. We both throw them on the screen just to cap this off. The U.S. spends, and now these numbers are the most recent. They're from 2015. We spend more than $51 billion to fight the war. We waste $51 billion a year on the war on drugs. Each year, roughly, there are 1,488,707 arrests for drug violations. And let's see how many people, or for marijuana alone, it's 643,000.
Oh, you are right, by the way. It is 4 times more likely that blacks get arrested for
no,
pot.
my shit. Let's see. Okay.
What did you say that number was for the number in for marijuana offenses?
Say that one more time, Scrambler.
You said it was 600,000?
643,121 people arrested for marijuana law violation in 2015, according to drugpolicy.org. And now, when it comes to people who are actually incarcerated, the U.S. has the highest incarceration rate in the entire world. And literally 1 out of every 111 adults is in jail.
Yeah. For reference, you said that number was 643,121, an average cost of $32,000 per inmate. That comes out to an average annual cost of billion. Over 20 billion. About 20.5 billion.
That's something we didn't even really touch on yet, is that if you legalize pot, you're going to be putting so much more money into the taxpayers' pockets, or even putting it into stuff that is way more useful than incarcerating people for smoking a fucking plant. It's really, it's so ridiculous.
That happens on so many layers. You reduce enforcement costs, you obviously reduce disincarceration costs, but here's the other thing. When you incarcerate someone, they're not generating tax revenue, so there's also the lost potential tax revenue of incarcerating them. You're getting that. So that's 3 wins right off the bat, and then you factor in the taxes. And essentially, I love how the plan's green, because it's literally a gold mine that's waiting to be tapped that we're just too arrogant to go into.
Now... Oh. Oh, one more thing. The number I was looking for, the percentage of people that are in our jails, and one big problem our nation faces is overcrowded prisons and jails. 46.3% of them are in there for drug offenses, nonviolent drug offenses. Think of that, how much tax money is wasted on something that, one, it does not... The people get out, they're still drug addicts, usually worse criminals.
The recidivism rate is through the roof.
Instead of actually following other countries, such as let me think. I know it's either Sweden, Switzerland, one of them, and actually even Portugal switched over to, instead of criminalizing, rehab programs, and the results were amazing.
Well, yeah, we've over-criminalized non-violent drug offenses, and we've been doing this for how many, maybe like 5 decades. We focus on punishment instead of rehabilitation. Not saying that
throw him in and lock him up.
And this goes beyond just smoking marijuana. With any type of drug addiction, you can't expect to throw someone in a fucking cell by themselves and expect them to come out a better person. Like, they need help
by themselves with actual criminals. So you're putting all right, think of it like this. You're putting some dude in who got caught smoking a joint, was his biggest crime, next to a guy who's in there for a bank robbery or, stabbing some dude in a gang fight. And then when you're in prison, a lot of times you have to adapt to your environment. You're going to become more like the people you're around.
That's a really good point.
We're making more criminals than we're curing. And the numbers are empirically, it is not a good system. But we feel this in America for some reason. There's this attitude of, we need to be tough and punish them, and they need to suffer for it. But it's nonsense. It's nonsense, and it's counterproductive. It's an old way of thinking that we seem to not be able to get past.
Yes, and I'll say one last thing for weed, just to kind of put this into perspective for people. $20.5 billion per year on incarceration. $20.5 billion. Is there anything we'd like to add for weed?
Oh, I think we got covered, and you know what? I think we've covered enough for one podcast. Took around 40 minutes of your time. So all you listeners, thank you for tuning in. Have a happy 420, and we'll be seeing you soon. Again, I'm Frank.
I'm Bobby.
I'm Justin.
Also known as the Scrambler, and we're Across the Lines News and Analysis. Thank you for watching.
See you guys next time.
See ya.